Council special meeting to order, and I'll state that the notice for this meeting was duly posted. There is a quorum of council present, and I'll turn it over to our board chairman, President.
Thank you, Mayor. The time is 5:04 p.m., and this meeting is hereby called to order. We have the presence of a quorum, and the meeting has been duly called, and notice of the meeting has been posted for the time and manner required by law.
Very good.
Hello?
That's Yolanda.
Mayor Pro Tem Ford is in this meeting during the conference.
Okay, very good. And I want to thank the school board for doing this. I think we probably need to do it more often if we're going to continue to be the partners that I think we should be. I think what we do as a city and what you all do as a school board and a school district have a great deal of similarity in how we affect each other. I have said this before, jokingly, but I mean it. I think the city, Missouri City, is probably the worst thing that could happen to the Fort Bend ISD because we've developed a city that people want to move to. And when they want to move here, they bring their kids with them. And that puts a burden on the school district to build more schools and to expand them. So on one hand, I'm tickled to death that we're one of the, according to Forbes magazine, one of the best cities in the United States to live in, to raise a family in, to go to school in. But on the other side, I know that it puts a burden on the school district to keep up with that growth. And we're going to keep growing. We're not through yet. You know, as you well know, Siena, when it's fully developed, will have 50,000 people living in it by itself. So we will have probably close to 125,000, 130,000 people living in Missouri City. So get ready, Charles. Get ready. So, you know, and as we do our planning, and I know Scott's here, as we have developers come into the city, we're making sure that they provide school space, that they provide land for those schools that you all are going to need to expand them, because I know what's pressing you right now with trying to find some land for particular schools. So we're gonna do our best going forward to make sure that what land we've still got developed and where we see an influx of more students, we're going to continue to ask our developers to set aside lands for whether it's an elementary school, whether it's a middle school or high school, or whatever it is. So that's our commitment to you, Charles, and to this board, that we're going to continue to do our part to do that. And with that said, I will turn it over to your school board president.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to start off by saying on behalf of the Fort Bend ISD board and staff, thank you for hosting us. We appreciate it. I also wanted to start by thanking Missouri City for their continued partnership. As a school district, we're in the business of developing students with a rigorous academic foundation and strong character, but we all know that can't be done alone, so we do appreciate your partnership. Collaborating with our communities is a top priority for our district, as you know, and we invite everyone in our community, parents, neighbors, businesses, faith-based organizations, and governmental agencies to come together for our students and our schools. And once again, we value that partnership. First off, I want to take a second to introduce the fellow Board of Trustees sitting with me here. I'll start off on the end there with Mr. K.P. George. Mr. K.P. George was elected in 2014 and re-elected in 17. Mrs. Grail James is not with us this evening. She's traveling with her family. Next, we have Mr. Jim Rice. Mr. Jim Rice was elected in May of 2010 and has served continuously in his position since then. He has served as board secretary and 2 consecutive years as board president. Next, we have Mrs. Tossan, which she was elected in 2014 and re-elected in 2017. She just finished serving her 2nd consecutive year as board president. And last but not least, Mr. Dave Rosenthal, who was, you were first elected in 2013, correct? 2012, and re-elected in 16, and you've served for 6 years now. So you are currently our board secretary. So anyhow, that's our team.
And thank you all. And I have to tell you that a little over a year ago, this was not a pleasing place to be in for 7 days and 7 nights. As most of the people in this room were sitting in this room trying to figure out what we were going to do, the Brazos River reached 59 feet. You'd had water in this building right here, but you know, I must say that at that time we worked very close with the school. And Charles, thank you for opening up Marshall High School for us to move people into shelters. So I've got Anthony Maroulis, City Councilman, District C, which is where you are, huh?
Elkins High School, Lexington Creek Elementary.
Yes. And if he leaves, he's got to leave shortly. He's got an open house at Dulles for his kids he's going to go to. But well, Jerry White, Jerry and I have served together too many years, probably. Almost 100 years. We've served together. Yeah, I didn't say that, sure. Yeah. And we got Floyd Emery.
75.
Floyd's District D, which is all the way down to Sienna. And then we've got Mayor Pro Tem Ford is on the conference call with us. And I don't know, is Chris here? Oh. Chris is under the weather, as a lot of people are. But anyway, yes, it was a disaster for a lot of us a year ago, but without the help of the schools and the county and such, we probably would not have survived this. As many of you know, we had 1,500 homes that had water in it. We did 1,300 high water rescues out of this facility.
Wow.
And it was a very trying thing. And the thing that hurt us more than anything, and it still hurts us, Charles, is that FEMA owes us a lot of money. They still owe us money from Ike. Yeah. Oh. So I can't tell you how much money they owe us from Harvey. I will tell you that my wish list that went to Rebuild Texas was $96 million. So we're getting through that as my city manager, Anthony Snipes, sitting here with us. He is right in the midst of us doing our budget. We moved our fiscal year from June 30th to September 30th, and for a number of reasons. It coincides with us getting our certified tax rolls, which we just did. And I know that we're going to be much like the school district. We're looking at kind of a year where we're going to raise taxes. We're going to raise our tax rate 3 cents. And let me just tell you what, all that does is put us level of what we did this year. It's no fluff, it's no extra stuff. As Anthony will tell you, we cut $4.5 million out of the wish list. And so what we're doing right now with our budget is trying to keep up with where we were and where the citizens expected us to be this coming year. And it's a tough thing, not only for the school district to budget for that. You all have a bond issue coming up, and we're going to support you in that bond issue. So anyway, thank you all for
And Mayor, real
coming.
quick
Yes.
on Harvey, thank you guys for setting up the shelters.
Yeah.
Without y'all's support, we would not have been where we could for our community.
Absolutely.
So thank y'all so much.
Marshall High School became a home for a number of people for probably longer than they wanted to be. Yeah, so we've always, and thank you for allowing us to use Marshall High School for July 4th. You know, it's a great venue, having that stadium, and they can face the fireworks. So it's a great partnership, so thank you all.
Yes, sir. So we will.
Yeah.
Do we want to? And I wanted to also say it's a partnership, and that's a true example of that. So thanks for all your hard work with Hurricane Harvey. Let's go ahead and get started with our discussion, coordination of planning for the city and district growth. I wanted to open that up. And
Yeah, and I think we'd like to hear from the school district what your plans are and where the bond issue is going to be used, and what part of it's going to be used in Missouri City in particular.
Absolutely. So I'll be happy to present a few.
And we have Councilman Jeffrey Boney.
So I'll present a few talking points on this, and I think this is an opportunity, frankly, for some candid conversation, because I know there's two pieces we need to talk about. We need to talk about the bricks and mortar. We need to talk about the bond. But I also know the city council, just as the board of trustees, is very interested in the performance of the schools in the Missouri City area. So I'd like to talk about those two different pieces.
Thank you.
I'll start with the I like to begin with the first things first, so I'm going to start with the school performance. So we've given you several documents this evening. One, it's kind of wrapped around bond stuff, but we wanted to give you some things. One of the things we do with our board is we give them talking points because they get a lot of questions in the community, as I know you do. But this colorful document shows a great deal of information about the schools in the Missouri city limits and how those schools are doing, the investments we're making. And that's the thing I think that's most important that I want to talk about tonight. It is no secret that several of the schools, Marshall, Missouri City, several of the elementaries, have been low performing for many, many years. There's many reasons for that. You know, in our boardroom on a regular basis, we talk about this very openly. The board has been very engaged in the conversation, and frankly, they're holding me accountable, and they're assuming responsibility as well for the achievement of all students in Fort Bend ISD. So with that in mind, if we flash back about 5 years, what we've seen is an investment in trying to get the right leaders in place, because what we know in education is you've got to have the right leadership. We've tried to identify the right assistant superintendents and the right principals for each of these schools. In some cases, we've got some strong leaders that were successful right off the bat. In other cases, we did not always choose well, and we've had to choose again. And in some schools, we've had situations occur beyond our control where people have left not at our will, but just because they've relocated or there were other issues that came up that they had to leave. So what we're seeking is stable leadership, because that's required in those schools, and ongoing investment. So what we're seeing right now is overall improved graduation rates at the high schools. Another very important thing we're seeing is improved advanced placement engagement with the kids. Number one, we are offering substantially more programs. Everything from CTE, we've had to add teachers at some of our schools, Marshall in particular, to address increased interest and enrollment in CTE, because we're offering programs now that were not offered 5 years ago. So we're really trying to get more things that students want to do, because what happens in a school is if you focus only on math, English, science, and social studies, students aren't engaged. That's important, but they want strong fine arts, strong athletics. They want CTE, the career and technical the trade programs. They want advanced programs where they can really learn and do things that they care about, robotics and things like that. And so we've made a lot of investments. HCC has partnered with us to also offer dual credit at no charge to the students. And so we've dramatically increased the number of students taking dual credit. Some of the obstacles we still face have been very public as well in terms of student behavior and student discipline. We've made substantial strides. Missouri City is very notable because of Jerry Cameron went into that school. I know some of you have been at events where she's been recognized for her efforts. She did a phenomenal job of going into Missouri City and changing the culture and the climate of that school. That's what we're looking for. This year, we hired a new principal from Marshall High School, and we've invested in an executive principal who's one of our most outstanding principals from Bush High School for the last 6 years, who now oversees Marshall as the executive principal, as well as all the schools in the Marshall feeder pattern. So the goal is that we really start setting an aligned pattern of high expectations and success in those schools. But we've talked tonight about collaboration, and that's where we really need your support. I know many of you have invested hours mentoring students. I know we have reading programs that you as council members have produced for our students, but we need you, just like we're engaging with pastors and members of the faith community, to really say our community is being represented in our schools right now. And the same issues you see in the community with poor behavior, drug use, all of these things, the negativity, the negative traits, they're coming through in our schools as well. And so it's so important. You know, we're doing a good job to try to keep it managed and strong, but in the end, we need moms and dads fully engaged. And that is a problem, or district-wide, but it's a particular problem in some of the schools in Missouri City that we're trying to engage the parents more effectively. There's also, we're working closely with faith-based community, trying to help them spread the message to parents of how critical it is that they come to school, that they engage with teachers, that they hold their children accountable for behavior, and for homework and those kinds of things. And those sound like old school values, but they're not old school. They are modern values because that's what it takes to be successful. Children do not grow up and learn on their own. They have to have parents that are leading the charge. And so anything we can do as a community, we have some amazing parent educators in a lot of the schools that serve Missouri City. They're doing things that are making a difference. You know, they're having GED classes so that parents can advance their life. They can finish the GED, get better jobs, make advancements to help their family be more economically stable. They're having financial training. They're spending so much time doing and that's the grassroots effort that it takes partnerships, but we can do a lot as a school system, but it takes all of us to do that. And I promise you, I probably in some of these pieces of paper, I've got some dollar figures, but I know just in the last 5 years, it has been millions of dollars of staffing and training and investment that we're making to try to make every school a high quality school. And we're making progress, but progress can be slow. And so we just want to keep walking this journey, and we want you to hold us accountable to it because we fully appreciate, we talk regularly in my staff meetings about the fact that we know the direct relationship between the quality of schools, the quality of city and community life, quality of business development. And so that's a marriage that we want to maintain a strong relationship in. I don't know, would any board members like to comment on any of that?
Yes. Jim Rice. First of all, I would like to echo Jason Burdine's thanks for meeting with us. This is something that Charles Dupree's predecessor, Charles has been with us, he's in his 6th year now, but his predecessor never entertained any joint meetings or reaching out, and it took us a while to get to this point, but Kristen Tasson was the first president to initiate listening tours and getting out in the community and meeting in different schools and with the city of Missouri City and the city of Sugar Land. It puts an extra burden on both parties' staff because this has to be recorded, this has to be set up. So it's a lot of extra work to take the show on the road, if you will. But I really think it's worth it. It's well worth it. And so we can sit down across the table from one another and just have a good, frank, candid conversation. But I will say that a couple of things. When I got on the school board in 2010, been a long day, we lost $28 million in state funding. And just like the city, our budget is 86% salaries and benefits. So when you lose that kind of revenue, you have to make cuts in staff. There's no other way around it. And because of that, I made it my mission in life to learn a lot about school finance. And I'm going to teach a class on school finance at the upcoming TASB meeting in later this month. And someone said, "So Jim, are you an expert on school finance?" And I said, "Well, I know more about it than 95% of the Texas legislature knows, and I'm going to share it with y'all." But beyond that, I would like to say that the Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath, whom I have known since he was serving as a trustee for the Dallas Independent School District, has and is now serving as the Commissioner of Education, has spent a tremendous amount of time with TASB, communicating to school districts his plan for unveiling A through F. I consider Mike a friend, although I don't agree with everything that he has initiated, in particular A through F. But one thing that he has done is to say, I'm going to keep a level playing field with regards to the STAR exam for several years. And in the past, that did not happen. So it's when you've got a district the size of Fort Bend ISD and you're dealing with new standards every year, It's like trying to change your tire while you're driving down the Southwest Freeway. It's pretty tough. But if he'll keep it the same for the next 3 years, that is going to help us tremendously. Number two, Commissioner Morath, if we don't improve underperforming schools within a certain time frame, he can come in and say, Dave, Kristen, Jim, KP, y'all get off the dais and move out in there with the audience, because I'm appointing a board of managers. And he can and will do that. So there is accountability. We're held accountable there. And as the school board goes, we govern, and we charge the superintendent with the responsibility of moving these schools out of improvement required. And then we don't tell him how to do it, because it's up to him to figure out how to do that. But we spend more money on our lower performing schools than we do on some of the other ones. We get some federal money plus our own money that we kick in. And then we have to hold Charles accountable, but we also have to support him. And although it seems like he's been here a long time, 5 years, in comparison to some of y'all who've been on the Missouri City Council, it's a drop in the bucket. And it takes time for a superintendent to turn the school district, because it's like trying to turn the Titanic. And in 2012, Dave and I were on the school board, and at that time I'd just been elected the board president for the first time. There were 4 trustees who, between the 4 of us, we had 7 years of collective experience. And 3 trustees were brand new, hadn't served a day, and Dave was one of them. And we hired Kathy Mintzberg, who was a former trustee on HISD. She served with Rod Page when he was on the school board there, to come meet with us and give us team building, because we needed a lot of it. And I asked Kathy, if I want to be a good school board trustee, what's the most important thing for me to do? And without batting an eye, she said, you need to keep your superintendent for 10 years. I said, wow, why is that? Because your superintendent's going to make changes and things, and some of the teachers aren't going to like it, and they're going to say, I'm going to tell him I'm going to do it, but I'm really not going to do it, and I'm going to wait for him to go away, and things will go back to the way they were. That's why it's important. I've told him, okay, you're only halfway there. You don't have to leave after 10 years, but we're working very hard with the superintendent to continue to implement the policies, the practices, the procedures, the in-service training, to continue to move Fort Bend ISD forward and improve student outcomes. So I just wanted everybody to learn about that, or to tell you about that. School finance factors into it, but I'll let someone else talk.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Anyone else want to make any comments? Mrs. Tossan?
So I just wanted to thank you guys for having us. We had the pleasure of hosting you last time, so thanks for hosting us this time. I just wanted to give a couple of tidbits of information about the A through F system that's going to be fully implemented next year. Some of our schools were given numerical grades this year, and the district was given a grade this year. And it's not quite as simple as the commissioner and the legislature might want you to believe. And so what I wanted to do was just throw out a couple of tidbits. First of all, no school district that has even a single school that's struggling is allowed to get an A. So even if you score an A, you're automatically reduced down to a B. So we're not even allowed to get an A even though we scored an A, if we have even one school that struggles. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of that. Also, the STAR test is the only evaluation criteria for every elementary school and every middle school. So there's nothing else they look at but the STAR test. Substitute assessments like the PSAT, the SAT, and the ACT, which our kids are taking to get into college, are not included, which distorts the values and decreases the overall score. So they don't even look at how our kids are doing on those tests to get into college. And in the elementary level, only 3 grade levels, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And at the high school level, only 3 assessments, Algebra, English 1, and English 2, determine the entire school's rating. So K, 1, and 2 are completely omitted at the elementary level. And only English, Algebra 1, English 1, those are freshman level courses. And Algebra 2, which is and English 2, which is a sophomore level course, that the entire school gets its entire rating based on those at the high school level. So there are many other things like that kind of are baked into that A through F pie, but those are just some things to keep in mind because it becomes quite a struggle when you have to focus on every child and every child's needs. And this is how the state is grading your schools, and this is what parents will be looking at. So it's going to be important for you guys as leaders in the city to know that, and I'm sure that we could prepare for you more information. I have the honor of serving as the legislative liaison again this session, and we're going to talk about some of that in a little bit, but I'd be happy to provide our city and county leaders with information that you guys need to help educate your constituents. The only other thing I would say is that since Dr. Dupree I know there's been a lot of talk in the community about discipline within Fort Bend ISD. There are numbers that you guys probably need to see. One of which is that in-school suspensions and out-of-school suspensions have been cut in half since Dr. Dupree has been here. And that's just one of the big numbers. I know a lot of you have seen the work that Jerry Kamerman did. Restorative discipline was why a lot of those positive results happened, and that's being rolled out now in other schools in our district. So that's now become the norm within Fort Bend ISD, in addition to other things. But some of those numbers get really distorted, and not that there's not work to do. There's always work to do. There's a lot of work to do. But when you're looking at some of these numbers, they're not all what they appear to be. And Dr. Dupree has been the primary driver in making sure that that those things have changed. The other 2 things I wanted to point out is that literacy has become really our issue of the day because it's why our kids are struggling. A lot of our kids are struggling. And we've discovered that it's a bigger problem than we thought it was. So our Early Literacy Center just kicked off a few weeks ago, and it's our pilot program. And my personal hope is that it expands very quickly because we have children who need it. And so we're going to be making sure that our kids are reading, especially as they progress through school, and other things will be done for our older kids who need help in that area. And we've also kicked off our Early Intervention Center. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's an inclusive preschool for kids with and without disabilities, and it's to prepare children, particularly with disabilities, to be included in the regular classroom, because that's how we educate kids, is we put them with their peers and we make sure they're getting everything they need. But I just wanted to highlight those couple of things because they are in Missouri City, and those are big rocks for us, big things that are being done to help our kids. And so we are continuing to move forward and advance new and innovative programs. Thank you.
You know, and you brought up a point that the schools are rated on English and Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. I challenge the legislature who have kids to even know what Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 is. I've been out of it too long. I'd have to hire tutors, and I was an English major. I could get them through that. My wife could do better. If it came to algebra, hell, I wouldn't know what they were talking about. So how can this legislature sit there and the schools and judge them on something that the parents who are responsible for helping these kids with their homework and stuff at night don't remember it either. They've been out of school too long. That's crazy.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Mayor,
Yeah.
because one of the things we're doing in Fort Bend ISD that's also innovative is developing a local accountability system. And so we believe our kids are more than just Algebra 1.
hope
We
so.
believe that those things are important for our kids to know. Math, English, social studies, and science, those things are important, like Dr. Dupree said. But other things are also important to our students and to our families. And so we kicked off last year development of a local accountability program that's going to allow you guys and our community members to know much more about our schools and our students and what they're being taught and what they're learning. And when we don't even look at things like PSAT and ACT and SAT, which as a parent I can tell you I care about for my kids, then those are the types of things that we're going to be adding into our formula. So be on the lookout for that, because that's going to tell you a lot more about our schools and what we're doing in our schools.
It's wrong.
Thank you, Mrs. Tossan. Mr. Rosenthal, do you have something to say?
Yes. I'd like to continue a little bit along what both my colleagues were saying, but I'd like to start with Mr. Rice's history lesson. So what's really amazing is that when I got on the board, when Jim was first board president, things were really different. I seem to remember most of our conversations up on the dais were about stuff, like tangible stuff, like Anthony Marul's favorite, how many Tahoes we were going to buy one year. I remember getting grief over that one. But you know, what's funny is we don't even talk about that stuff anymore. You know, it's all on the consent agenda. If somebody has a question, they write to the superintendent, we get an answer, it gets shared in that email with everybody. Once in a while, there'll be a short discussion, you know, somebody will bring up just a quick question, but that's not what we even focus on anymore, because everything we focus on now really is student achievement and what's going on in the classroom. And what really kind of started kicking that off was again, it was my first year on the board. We had a curriculum assessment, and it was done by an outside auditor, and it failed miserably. And one of the things that they really nailed us on were that we had no policy, board policy, that involved curriculum. And so that was kind of an eye-opener, because most people, I don't know, I wasn't around, but it didn't seem like the board really focused on policy. And so as someone who's been on the policy committee for the last 2 years, it's really important. And I think what's really neat is the stuff that we write in that policy, it's not just words. We're actually seeing it embedded into the classrooms. So we're seeing how it affects the students from K through 12. Things like our profile of a graduate, student ownership of learning, some of the other things that we did as far as allowing kids to continue with fine arts and not have to worry about how it affects their GPAs. All these things directly affects kids, and it comes from written words on policy, which people never really paid attention to, it seems like, to, you know, seeing the effects of those things actually in a classroom. So I'm really proud of our work, and I think, you know, we've got a lot more policies. Grail James actually chairs that committee along with myself, and we've got a lot more policy to go through. We've really just kind of scratched the surface. So, but it just, you know, when Jim started, you know, talking about it, really struck me as how things have changed for the better. So, and also I was going to bring up as far as the new accountability system that we're really trying to work on, because we all understand that, yeah, STAR scores just they do show somewhat somebody's grasp of the TEKS, but you know, there are other things that are just as important. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Mr. George, do you have a comment?
I'm on?
It's on.
Okay. I just wanted to echo on, you know, my colleagues were saying, and I could tell you this 19 years ago when I moved, I asked where is the good schools are. I didn't know anything about this area. And so I could almost guarantee most of the people move here. It is one of the most important part of the puzzle where they decide to live. And so that's what I did. And obviously we are blessed with a school system which really care about the children and their future. And in my case, I always thought, when I got on the board 2014, and I always thought why we cannot have these kind of discussions, because I'm sure some of these information has been shared. Maybe it is new to some of our city officials and elected members of Missouri City, maybe. And so I'm so excited to see that we are having this conversation, and I appreciate Ms. Tassan and also Mayor Allen taking that initiative a year ago, and now we are meeting second time, and I hope we continue to do this so that we can communicate, and I'm sure in the community you're going to hear, the new rating and all that come out and talk about the school and having some information by yourself, so that you can have that conversation. And I know I'm just repeating maybe most of what my colleagues were saying, and I just want to simply say that I'm so thankful. We are doing this so that we have an understanding of what we are trying to do, and we could get in alignment with what city is trying to do. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. George. I wanted to also point out that our board vice president, Addie Haliger, just showed up.
All right, thank you. I just got filled in by our attorney here. So thank you all for having us today. I'm also sorry for my tardiness. I've been in traffic for the last hour and 15 minutes trying to get from downtown. So, appreciate you all's patience. I guess I'm sure everyone else has probably already said all the wonderful things, and the reasons why we're here today is really to understand how we can collaborate with the city and to put the best things in place for our students in this area as well as for the city. And I know Mr. George just stated about the calibration with the two areas, and I just suspect that hopefully from this meeting that we can put some type of beginnings of some type of plan in place to make sure that we all are reaching the same goals through this process. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Haliger. I'm extremely proud of my team, and thank you for all the words. I couldn't have said it any better. Do we want to move on next to the... Oh, Mr. Rice, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I have one more history lesson I'd like to share. In 2012 or 13, I was in Washington, D.C., calling on Senator John Cornyn and Ted Cruz. I was there to advocate on behalf of public education. And at that time, we had No Child Left Behind. Now, No Child Left Behind was a federal assessment program that was initiated by Dr. Rod Page, and it had very lofty goals. But that policy was put on automatic pilot, and each year the threshold for passing increased until when it finally hit the 10th year, because Congress had not reauthorized it, Congress passed this bill, and their original intent was to say, let's let this bill run a couple of years and then we'll come back and look at it and see if we need to tweak it. But they could never agree to do that. And so these escalating thresholds were increasing to where 100% of all the children in each grade level were going to have to pass this test. And if only one failed, that school would be labeled as not having met adequate yearly progress. And that comes with federal sanctions. So I was waiting in line. A very nice young woman who was an aide to Senator Cornyn said, okay, you're here for public education, so what's going on with public education? And I said, well, remember, you asked. Here it is. Next year, not one school in the state of Texas is going to make adequate yearly progress. And furthermore, not one school in the entire country is going to make adequate yearly progress. Because if only one child fails to make the grade in a school, the entire campus is rated that way. And then you're going to have to explain to the rest of the world how it was that no school in America could pass a test that we created in the first place. That's like having to explain you really screwed up without sounding stupid, and it's hard to do. So that's what happens sometimes when well-meaning and well-intentioned people put in place assessments that are not measuring the whole child. And that's where we've gotten off track, and we've gotten cuckoo about test scores. And which is why my colleagues have been talking about our own assessment program that we have created in Fort Bend ISD to measure success, because everybody and their brother wants to measure how our kids are doing. And A through F is a horrible idea. We should not label a school, give it a letter grade, A through F. It's like the scarlet letter F. Once you get an F, it's very hard to ever erase that. School district shouldn't get those grades. It's a terrible, terrible idea. But that is the law, and we are complying with the law, and we are following that to the best of our ability. And we're focused now on making sure all of our students are growing, that they are proficient, that they're college and career ready, and we're closing the achievement gap. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mr. White, did you have a question, sir? Comment?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
All right.
And since y'all all said something, I think I'll say something.
Get close to the mic so they can hear
And
you.
I do like the word candid, and I am going to be candid, because all y'all know that. But I wouldn't have your jobs for nothing in the world. That's why I'm on city council. You know, we win every once in a while. It's hard to win and do your job, and it's very complicated, and I respect that. But I'm also the type of person that I'm gonna tell you what I think of some of the missing pieces. Perception. All your good work is not perceived the way you're doing it, and there's a perception of distrust. Okay, and I can't tell you how to fix that. I think working with us, because we talk to the same people, can kind of help that. When you go out and talk to a group of pastors, and I know you didn't generate them, but they don't represent Missouri City. Okay, call us. We'll tell you who represents Missouri City and who you ought to be talking to. I think that hurt your efforts more than what it is. And to go out and say that these pastors, and I only knew one of them, and I've been on council for 36 years combined, one. Okay, give us a call. We can help you. Okay, we're all in it together. Now, I'm not saying what you did was wrong. Okay, I think what you did was in good faith. I put it that way. But you really got information from the wrong people, and it really upset a lot of people. When you had pastors there, I can tell you the churches. Alan can tell you the churches, particularly in that meeting that most black people go to in Missouri City, they weren't represented there. You didn't have Covenant Glen. You didn't have Windsor Village. You didn't have Rema Rice Church. That's most of the black people in Missouri City. Those pastors that were there saying, well, we have parents with students, that was probably a true statement, but it might not have been but 10. Okay? So give us a call. We can help you, okay, to get to the right people. But there is a perception out there, out of all the hard work that you do, that you're against some people, that it's better than somewhere else. You know, I don't know whether y'all ever decide to do a survey of the parents to begin to see what is, because if that's not fixed, all your good work doesn't get fixed, okay? So you kind of have to, we do the same thing. We get beat up, chewed out, sometimes lied on, you know, but we do survey our constituents to find out what it is they're thinking. How can we fix? Now, there are some people you're not going to ever fix anything with. They can't be fixed. And that's just the way it is. But that's what I would encourage that you do. I know every last one of y'all. I know Dr. Dupree. I know y'all work hard. I know you have good intentions. But good intentions is not going to fix the problem, okay, until people start believing in you, okay? And that's what's going to help you fix the problem. I know that you're doing it. I've been in some of those schools. Schools are not very welcoming, okay? Here I am on city council, and I feel like I go into school, they think I've done something or going to do something. You know, and you got a system where you do the security on everybody coming, it ought to get kind of friendly after the end, okay? You look the person up and you're real nice, and that receptionist not there should not be so resistant that I feel like I'm not wanted, okay? I grew up in a little small town 36 miles from here. I went to a high school. We got the high school because my grandpa gave the land for the high school. Back then, blacks went to Galveston, the high school, and he didn't want my oldest sister going to Galveston, so he gave the land. I lived right across the street from the school. Everybody in town knew us. You know, you can go into school, sit, visit, talk to everybody. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go back to those days, but I'm trying to create a perception of how people feel when they feel that they are a part of something. And I think parents don't necessarily feel like they're part of this district. And all the stuff that you do, until you fix that, it's not going to ever happen. And that's a tough job, believe me. But we can help you. We got people running for city council talking about they're going to fix the schools. They don't know that that's y'all's job, not ours, okay? But we can help you as we go through our processes and explaining to people. That's what the school board does. It's kind of like the lady that wanted to tell me what to do as a city councilman. And I said, ma'am, I don't do that. And, oh yeah, I said, if that council person told you that they're lying, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm just, everybody know I'm pretty matter of fact. I said, but let me give you this. If your house catches a fire and it burn and you call me, this is what I promise you, it's gonna burn down. You better call the fire department. That's what they do. And we got the same situation in making sure that people know who to connect and talk to in the school. School districts bid. That poor parent, they don't know. You know, they're just trying. But it's got to be more. Now, I am glad to see that y'all adopting Jerry's program. I'm going to call it Jerry's program. Because those kids went to Colorado with Denver with us. They were all very well respected, well behaved. Jerry had complete control of them. And in fact, then I said that I hope the district adopt what you're doing at that school, because it is something good. Now, I don't know how she got all that done, but she did. And so I'm glad to see that happening, because we need it in Missouri City because the schools are affecting us. They're affecting us from getting people to come and invest, okay? You know, when you put your house on the market, what are the two things you see? Schools and crime. Well, we don't have a crime problem in Missouri City, but we do have a school problem. And it's not just on one side of town. We have to look at the whole picture, because when people look at Missouri City, they look at but I personally, I'm here to help. Like I said, I know all of you. I've been knowing Jim for God knows how long. But I would never come to your school board and stand up and tell you, okay, I'll pick up the phone and call each one of y'all, okay? And that's how I've always operated. And I do appreciate the ones that have listened to me, but y'all know I'm gonna be very candid, okay? The other thing is that you got this item about single member district.
Sir,
okay. Huh?
that's
That's not on the agenda, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I won't talk about that.
Thank
I'll
you.
wait till another time, okay? But you got to address those things that are affecting your ability to get your job done, even though you're trying to do everything you can.
Jeffrey, do you have something?
Yeah, actually. Is this on?
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt. We appreciate that.
I'd like to
And
just.
I got your back.
You done, Jerry?
Thank you.
I'm done.
I'd like to piggyback on my colleague's comments about perception. First of all, welcome to Missouri City. We do have a perception problem to a large degree, and I think that a lot of it has to do with many in the community's belief that they're not considered before decisions are brought to the table or made. Here recently, there were several schools that were rumored to be closed, and of course, programs taken away from out of schools. Many people in the community have had to fight and meet and gather to try to lobby U.S. trustees to avoid making those decisions. I believe that a lot of people in the community feel that you guys arbitrarily make the decisions and have not even gone into the community to engage fully everyone in the community. Maybe a select handful of people, but as Jerry stated, many of these people may not speak for the masses. So you can't just say, I spoke to X and believe they speak for everybody. As Jerry said, we are here in Missouri City. We know what our constituents are asking for. We know what they need, they want. And so to bypass us and just speak to a select few people without, kind of getting in contact with us, I think would be something that you want to consider moving forward. I'm thankful that many of the decisions that were rumored to be on the table were backed off of. And I would like to think that if there is anything as it relates to potential school changes, that they be brought forth to the entire community and not just some people.
Anthony? Floyd, you have anything?
No, I guess somebody, and touched a little bit on it, the cooperation that you have with HCC as far as some of the technical programs that they have available there. And I think an emphasis on those types of programs, at the high school level, I think are important because, not all of our kids are going to be able to matriculate up to a 2-year or even a 4-year college. So they're looking for, for other opportunities. And if we don't give them opportunities, they're going to be on the streets. And I think there's the opportunity there to, like I say, to work with HCC and maybe some of the other, if there are other trade schools, to to help those kids, to be able to take advantage of that, because we've got a real labor shortage in a lot of trades, and they make nice dollars, so it's not like it's you're coming in at at a $5 or $10 flipping hamburgers. Not that there's anything wrong with flipping hamburgers, but there's opportunities out there, and I think we need to take advantage as much as we can, as we move the kids through the various levels of school, and whatever opportunities are made available to them. And finally, I know that you folks had I guess I want to say difficult time, but when we were looking at the feeders going into the high schools, I know that was a real touchy situation. You got a lot of feedback from the parents, so I know that's a difficult process and task, but I just ask that you continue to put effort on trying to have those feeder schools be kind of in line with the neighborhoods, and not trying to move kids great distances because of maybe you've got some capacity, additional capacity in some other schools. I know the goal is to have equal capacity, and so it's I recognize the difficulty. I've talked with Kristen a number of times, and so yeah, she knows some of the feelings of some of the folks in Quail Valley that had some questions. So, and I appreciate that she was able to talk with them and work with them. So that would be probably the thing that I think is important to Quail or to Missouri City.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to say I've seen firsthand what's going on at Briargate, and that's what a great example of what you guys have accomplished. I've also enjoyed working with Denise. We collaboratively work together to do the random act of cardness. where we go out and recognize teachers. It's kind of like a surprise, but the teachers are in awe. The staff gets excited. I've done that now for 2 years. I'm going to do it again this year, and we'll get other council members involved as well. We've done Lantern Lane, Lexington Creek, Missouri City Middle, of Mentor there in Lakeo, and we will extend that out to other campuses. So I've enjoyed Tenise's partnership and look forward to a stronger one this year.
Very good.
Thank you, sir. Do we want to go ahead and move on to the, you want to go ahead, Mrs. Tolson?
Yeah, if I may, first of all, I wanted to, Councilmember, oh good, he's coming back. I wanted to thank Councilmember Wyatt and Councilmember Boney for your comments, all of you actually for your comments, but it's not always easy to have these kinds of conversations in public, but one of the reasons I started these joint meetings is because I think it's important that we do have them in public. Perception is 99% reality. So even if it doesn't align with what's really happening, it doesn't really matter if people perceive it that way. So we always appreciate getting that kind of feedback, and we have gotten that feedback in the past. I want to comment on a couple of things, and then I'm going to ask if Dr. Dupree would explain a couple of things and the way that we do things in Fort Bend ISD, because I just so happened I was the board president the past 2 years. I was the board president during Hurricane Harvey, like the mayor said, and a lot of that collaboration started about that time. So I'm not sure what the perception is with the pastors. The pastors came on board and stepped in when Willow Ridge and Marshall combined. They came to us and offered support in combining those two schools. They signed up, they came and spent time, several days out of the week there, and that was actually the kickoff of our collaborative communities effort. That was something that I worked on a lot as the board president, and the board worked on pretty heavily in a committee that Ms. Helliger and Ms. James and I are on in developing our strategic plan and our strategic goals, and the board voted on that right before Hurricane Harvey hit and right before Willow Ridge and Marshall were kind of thrown together because of the mold issue. And really that effort, I think, is what kicked off our collaborative communities that was written into our goals, and the pastors stepped up to help with that. So that the pastors are not, we're not sought out, at least I know by me as the board president or anyone else that I'm aware of on the board in particular, but they stepped in to help us. And then we've expanded that collaborative communities, not just in Missouri City, but in all areas of the district by seeking leaders, elected officials in our community, faith leaders in our community, parents in our community, volunteer coordinators in our schools, parent coordinators in our schools, and there is a whole group of people that are typically brought in and asked for feedback about things. Some of those have been put forth a little better than others, but that's our goal is when we wrote that policy. So I wanted to put that part of it out there. Well, let me say this. I don't know that you're.
Regarding the pastors, obviously anybody that is willing to come and volunteer and work in the school should be welcome. But when they get represented that they're representing a group of people, that's where I think you create the issue of perception. And then when you lead it in the newspaper that this is what the pastors did, and you got a whole bunch of people going, who are these people? I don't know but one of them, And so,
well, I understand
maybe you just got caught up into something. I'm just trying to say be aware, okay?
And I understand what you're saying. I just was talking from the district's perspective. That's the only partnership we have had with them that I'm aware of. I also to Councilmember Boney's comments about the process that we just went through with the facilities planning. That process started as it typically does with a community committee that gave some recommendations or some feedback. That's how some of those rumors got started. And that was the beginning of the process, which was to